Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel. I know there's a sequel to Mulan, which I don't. Do we even count them? Like,
No, they don't
I've
add
seen-
anything to the story.
The only direct-to-video sequel that I genuinely could say that I liked, well, no, it was two. It was The Lion King 1.5. That one was decent, and then I liked Krunk's New Groove.
Krunk's New
That
Groove actually is super fun, and
Yeah.
Lion King 1.5. The music is super underrated.
Oh yeah,
we've been recording, and I'm glad that this is going to be the intro to the episode now. So this is
All right,
this is
well-
why wasn't it better? And I am your host, Patrick Darms,
And I am your co-host, Anton Paras.
and we have a return guest, a favorite of the show at this point, Zion Parker. Welcome back.
Welcome,
thank
Zion.
you. I have to just join the reoccurring cast at this point, but thank you.
You are always welcome.
Yes, you
Awesome.
are.
This is going to be fun because we have been dancing around covering a Disney movie with you for a while. I feel like we've had you on for a few times right now for, a pretty diverse set of movies, right? What have we had you on for? Oppenheimer
I think it was Oppenheimer. I know it was Harry Potter. It was
and Twisters.
Oh yeah, that disaster. Well, no, not disaster. That one was actually
Well,
decent.
It was okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it was
Well,
okay.
I mean, Pat, I'm looking at this movie. This is what you give me to work with, but
Yeah,
I've seen worse.
I've seen worse. Wait, have we had you on for a movie? I can't remember, or is that it? Oppenheimer.
I think it was only.
Twisted. Yeah, no, that is
So,
3.
yeah.
I should have probably known that before I started talking about it. But hey, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's get down to business.
Gosh, the songs in here are just bangers.
Yeah, I'm
They're
just
so good.
I'm just referencing songs at this point.
That is funny.
Yeah. But the point I was trying to make before I started really rambling there was, Zion, we've had you on for 3 episodes so far, and offline we have been talking about Disney just in general. And we finally got around. We're like, okay, why don't we actually have you on for an actual Disney movie instead of just talking about it?
Yeah.
A Disney Renaissance. Not just any movie.
Yeah.
Not just any Disney movie. Something from the Renaissance, which, if you're a millennial or, a little bit younger, it's a period of time that is held in extremely high regard.
Yeah, it's a girl worth fighting for.
That's funny.
Yes, to defeat the Huns.
That is funny.
Yes. But before we really get into it, Zion, I know you have got a lot of stuff going on with your projects and the work that you've been doing. Anything you want to share or plug for our listeners?
Not at the current moment, to be honest. I'm just in the lab. We closed on a new house a few weeks ago.
Congrats.
Yeah, that was. I don't want to have to move again for a very long time, but that was a process within itself. So really, I'm just like adjusting, getting settled in here. I do want to get back to creating content because I was very consistent at it, but once talk of moving happened, I sort of fell off completely. But yeah, that is exactly what's going on over here.
That's exciting. I hear you on the not moving thing because it's pretty much the most exhausting thing you can do.
Mentally and physically. Because you don't realize how much stuff you have until it's time to go.
And you'll lose 3 to 5% of it in the move. You'll just never see it again.
Oh yeah, yeah, missing a lot of things.
Yeah, it'll take months to find everything.
They always resurface like a year or two later, so I'm not worried about it.
After you've replaced it and you know.
Yeah.
But, well, I just want to remind the listeners, your cookbook is still available.
Oh yeah, it's still available. If you do follow me on social media, forewarning, you're about to get very annoyed with me um, because the amount of posts that not only I want to make, but the publication wants me to make for the book is about to get kind of out of hand. So there you have it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, then, let's get into the discussion of Mulan. Clever Mulan proves her worth outside of her tradition bound society when, disguised as a male soldier, Ping, she bravely takes her father's place in the Imperial Army. Helped by her outrageously funny guardian dragon Mushu and a lucky cricket named Cricky, Mulan strives to earn the respect of her fellow warriors and their courageous Captain Shang. Mulan's adventures lead to a climactic battle atop the imperial palace where her family's honor and the fate of the emperor and all of China rest in their hands. Mulan was released on June 19th, 1998 by Walt Disney Animation Studios, directed by Barry Cook and Tony Bancroft, screenplay by I'm going to butcher some of these names. I apologize in advance. Screenplay by Rita Hassau, Chris Sanders, Philip Lazebnik, Raymond Singer, and Eugenia Bostwick Singer, with an additional story credit for Robert D. Sansalsi. That's a wonderfully English name there. Eugenia Bostwick Singer. Love it. Love it. Featuring the voices of Ming Na Wen, Eddie Murphy, Miguel Ferrer, B.D. Wong, June Foray, James Hong, Pat Morita, and George Takei. The budget was $90 million. That is $173 million adjusted for inflation. And the
Jesus.
box office was, yeah, right? It's expensive.
Mm.
And the box office was $304 million. That is $586 million adjusted for inflation. So, Zion, tell us, why Mulan?
Why Mulan? Honestly, really just a lot of the movies within the well, yeah, wasn't the 90s the entirety of the 90s from like 1989 to like about like right at the cusp of 2000? Wouldn't that be considered like the Renaissance period?
Very much so.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, The Little Mermaid to Tarzan.
Okay, so everything that came out in the Renaissance period, regardless if I did enjoy it or not, you could tell that they were taking creative liberties, they were taking risks, and everything, honestly, like, I think the only things that I didn't really care for out of the Renaissance period, or it was really one, was the Rescuers Down Under. That was the only one I was just like, because I didn't really care for the Rescuers. But Mulan, I don't know. It's special. I can't really put it into words, but it's such a special film and it has a special energy to it that when I watch it even to this day, I don't know, it has such a warmth to it. I can't really articulate it in a way that I really want to.
Well, I think a lot of people would agree with you because I was teasing it in the very intro, but like the Renaissance, especially to folks our age, it's the gold standard for everything that has come after it and really before that Disney does, right? You mentioned how they were really taking a lot of risks.
Oh yeah.
I really agree with that. It's certainly not something that they would do now. And unlike previous eras in Disney, I'm specifically talking about the 80s, it's very clear that they were not cutting corners here. You know, we mentioned the budget. They were really unafraid to spend money back then. It wasn't just creatively, they were throwing everything they had at these films creatively and financially. And you can really see it on screen. By the way, I'm with you on The Rescuers Down Under. That's the one movie everyone just seems to forget that's actually part of the Renaissance. But yeah, it doesn't feel like part of the Renaissance. When you think of the Disney Renaissance, at least
Yeah.
at least for me, right?
It has a cult following. It really is like
It,
very much a cult following.
it does,
But
but
it's
I
not
would
but it's not widespread
no.
appeal.
It seems like one of the Disney movies that came out way before 1990.
Well, and I think that's part of it. A lot of the younger generation that would have even seen it in the 90s, they weren't around for the first one. So,
No. And if you
Yeah.
look at the big four, right, of the Renaissance, I'm talking about Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King. Those are like the S tier ones, right, that everyone holds probably in the highest regard.
Oh
right.
yeah.
The Rescuers Down Under, of course, came out in between two of those, and yet it's never included with those four,
I mean, there's several films in the Renaissance that I think a lot of people don't think about,
but not Mulan.
but not Mulan.
Like I was telling you guys before we actually started recording, like I knew exactly I think Mulan and Pocahontas were the two films that I was very aware of, but I didn't see them until later on in life. And I'm glad like it went that way because I was able to comprehend them a little bit better versus me at a very young age trying to understand exactly what was going on. But yeah, they're awesome films.
The first half of the Renaissance seems to have a higher reputation than the second half, although Mulan is very highly thought of. It, of course, had a very high profile, very poorly received live action remake in 2020. I know Disney is very quick to blame its failure on the global pandemic. I didn't
Mm.
see it.
We all know
I
that's not why
can't
that
speak to
movie
it.
failed.
I can absolutely speak to it, but that's a totally different episode. So stay tuned, listeners.
I
We
guess we're going to cover it at some point.
I have never seen that film, but I could tell there were so many factors that were stacked against that film, and the
Yeah,
pandemic wasn't one of them.
yeah. The first factor was they decided to make it, and that was a big challenge.
Well, the second factor was really you took something that was rated G initially, that was accessible to all audiences, and you took out essentially the magic and everything of what made Mulan
Yeah.
Mulan, and you turned it into this gritty action type film, hiked it up to PG-13. That no. And
Yep.
then you got
It's
rid of the musical numbers. No.
That's the big thing.
it was all filler. That's all it was. No heart.
Uh, I didn't watch it, so I can't really comment on anything outside of that. But
I don't think you need to. I mean,
Mhm.
I saw this one in theaters in 1998. My family and I went to see it. I really liked it. I remember being really impressed by the animation and the music. But for whatever reason, Mulan was one of the ones that I didn't rewatch a lot. That's probably due to the fact that I was 10 years old at the time. So I was just about at the point where I was aging out of their target demographic. You know, by the time you're turning 10, 11, you're looking for a little bit more mature things, usually. So that's probably why I didn't rewatch it a lot. You know, the thing that stood out to me when we chose this to cover this now is
Mhm.
now that we're doing a movie podcast, Anton, Jerry Goldsmith did the music.
That's awesome.
As soon as I saw that,
Right?
I was like, my eyes just lit up because, you know, one of the most legendary Hollywood composers didn't do a lot of stuff with animation. And it would have been very much an outlier for him to work
Hmm.
on a Disney movie like this. So that excited me the most. And then, Anton, I know there's something you want to talk about.
In general, like the Szechuan sauce.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, we had to talk about this earlier today. It's just so insane how this one promotional item from the McDonald's run of this film ended up being the biggest meme because of Rick and Morty, but it was so popular that they actually brought it back. That's powerful. I can't really say that I remember what Szechuan sauce tastes like.
No,
I didn't
no.
try to, but the fact that that show made it so desirable and just fans were ravenous for it, I'm impressed. Had people thinking about Mulan again, so I don't mind.
Was that before the remake or after?
It was before. Yeah,
Okay.
cuz
I'll be honest with
Mulan,
you. I didn't
yeah.
remember the Szechuan sauce tie-in at all.
I thought it was fake when they were talking about it in Rick and Morty. I was like, this can't be real, but it was so specific and actually very real. And I hope this becomes a real cue up the promo for McDonald's for Mulan. And not only do you have the Szechuan sauce, the McDonald's packaging is the McDonald's logo on what looks like Chinese takeout boxes.
I did see that.
Yeah, they're doing that. A lot of very ambiguous, like Eastern fonts and a lot of stuff that did not age well. But you know what? That's McDonald's in the 90s. It's
Well,
okay.
it
they
didn't pay
tried.
off well for them either because this movie bombed in China.
Mulan bombed in
China was,
China?
it
It
did. It
did. We're going to
did.
talk about it.
Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't fake. Well, I know like Chinese audiences, well, just overseas audiences, the way they receive American films, it fascinates me.
It's one of those instances where it wasn't Chinese enough.
Oh,
And it
no.
was
Yeah.
very different in the late
Yeah.
90s, too.
Yeah.
It's just a different
Oh,
story.
yeah. Different.
Correct
Economically
me if
very
I'm
different. Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. I think still to this day, they will only select about 10 Western movies to actually show in China. Is that still true?
I don't know. I don't remember if like that's still the same policy,
It
but
was for a while, right?
yes, and
Yeah.
I know that distribution relationships with China and how films are edited now to fit those standards is so
Hilarious
fast. It's just fascinating.
and
I mean,
hilarious.
we talked about it with Iron
Iron,
Man, right?
yeah,
Iron
Iron Man
Man
3.
2
Yeah,
or Iron Man 3.
yeah,
So, heck, even Mulan, the remake. So,
Really?
yeah.
oh
I
yeah.
know. I remember the only film I know of that when it came out overseas, they cut it down so much was 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know if either of you have seen the Chinese edit of that film, but it is absolutely hilarious.
I have only seen the American edit.
It is
Yeah.
so clean to a point where you could show it to church groups. It is hilarious, dude.
There's actually not much to that movie then.
Oh no, it's just a bunch of
Uh,
talking, and then like the way the intimate
It's just
scenes are.
5 shades.
uh,
No,
oh,
more like 2.5.
oh goodness. Well,
A single shade of gray.
I'll add one more bit just for me. Look, I was an Asian kid in the 90s. This was the biggest film for Asian representation at all, like in forever in general, not just in animation, but in Hollywood. So of course I was excited, and man, I was so stoked to see this film, and I really enjoyed it in theaters. It was a very much a staple in my household, especially with my sister also loving this film. So this was frequently on playing on VHS. So just a quick intro to my relationship with this movie.
Have you seen it a lot since you were a
I
kid?
I'd say that it's a film that I've revisited more so recently as I've wanted to, as everyone does when they have nostalgia, they kind of revisit a film and see does it stand up. And it's amazing, and we'll talk about it more. But I feel like this film is just so much better for all of these little pieces and the way that it tells stories and the way that it's so mature for being a kids film that I absolutely enjoyed as an adult while watching it.
Well, let's do it then. Production history. So, in 1989, Walt Disney Feature Animation Florida opened with 40 to 50 employees, and its original purpose was to produce cartoon shorts and featurettes. But by 1993, Disney executives were convinced to allow the Florida studio to produce their first film. Around the same time, Disney Feature Animation developed an interest in Asian themed legends, beginning with the optioning of several books by children's book author Robert D. Sansucci. Saucy, whatever. I'm sorry. I could sit here and butcher names all night for you. Around that same time, a short straight to video film titled China Doll about an oppressed and miserable Chinese girl who is whisked away by a British Prince Charming to happiness in the West was in development. Thomas Schumacher asked Sanssouci if he had any additional stories, in response to which Sanssouci turned in a manuscript of a book based on the Chinese poem The Song of Fa Mulan. Ultimately, Disney decided to combine the two separate projects. Barry Cook, a visual effects animator who had been working at Disney since the days of Tron, was offered two projects in development: a Scottish folktale with a dragon, or Mulan. Knowledgeable about the existence of dragons in Chinese mythology, Cook suggested adding a dragon to Mulan. Very good suggestion on his part. While
Mhm.
working as an animator on the gargoyles for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Tony Bancroft was offered to co-direct. Was that the guy from Genesis, the band? It was a
Wait, I was
joke.
gonna say I don't think
Nobody,
so.
no, nobody was laughing at that. All right,
Okay.
I'll leave that in too. I think that's Tony Banks,
Okay.
not Bancroft. Sorry for all you Genesis fans out there. I'm one of them too.
Tony Bancroft, that was the Tomb Raider. Wait, no, sorry, that was Lara Croft.
Lord Jesus.
I almost want to mispronounce names now just because of those comments. But in 1994, the production team sent a select group of artistic supervisors to China for 3 weeks to take photographs and drawings of local landmarks for inspiration and to soak up local culture. In its earliest stages, the story was originally conceived as a Tootsie-inspired romantic comedy film.
That is a weird comparison.
Okay, yeah, I can't say that with a straight face.
Yeah.
Where Mulan, who is a misfit tomboy who loves her father, is betrothed to Shang, whom she has not met. On her betrothal day, her father Fa Zhu carves her destiny in a stone tablet in the family temple, which she shatters in anger, running away to forge her own destiny. I think we dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah.
That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
The Fazu. I didn't know he had a son.
Screenwriter Chris Sanders urged the producers to be more faithful to the original legend by having Mulan leave home because of the love for her father, and this convinced the filmmakers to decide to change Mulan's character in order to make her more appealing and selfless. Because there was no dragon in the original legend, Mulan did not have animal companions. It was Roy Disney who suggested the character of Mushu.
Or little brother, who was in the movie for less than a minute.
Veteran story artist Joe Grant created the cricket character of Cricky, although animator Barry Temple admitted quote, the directors didn't want him in the movie, the story department didn't want him in the movie. The only people who truly wanted him in the movie were Michael Eisner and Joe Grant and myself, because I was assigned the character. I would sit in meetings and they'd say, well, where's the cricket during all this? And someone would say, oh, to hell with the cricket. They felt Cricky was a character who wasn't necessary to tell the story, which is true. End quote. Okay.
Such pain.
Dang.
Such pain over a cricket.
That's some serious animosity in the Disney meetings.
Maybe there's only room for one cricket at Disney. That's why.
Not Jiminy's ass.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is definitely the lesser of the two crickets. Although I didn't mind the character in here. It's fine.
Cricky's fun.
Yeah.
Since there was no general consensus on the time of Mulan's existence, the animators based the visual design on the Ming and Qing dynasties. An important part of their design was to turn the art style closer to Chinese painting, with watercolor and simpler design, as opposed to the details of The Lion King and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Additional inspiration was found in the earlier Disney animated films such as Bambi, Pinocchio, and Dumbo to establish a sense of staging. So to create 2,000 Hun soldiers during the Hun's attack sequence, the production team developed crowd simulation software called Attila. Isn't that fun? This software allows thousands of unique characters to move autonomously. A variant of the program called Dynasty was used in the final battle sequence to create a crowd of 3,000 in the Forbidden City. For the voice cast, the production sought out Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, or Korean vocal talents. Tia Carrera was an early candidate to voice the title character. Lea Salonga, who had been singing the singing voice of Princess Jasmine in Aladdin, was initially cast to provide both Mulan's speaking and singing voices, but the directors did not find her attempt at a deeper speaking voice when Mulan impersonated Ping convincing, so Ming-Na Wen was brought in to speak the role. Salonga provided the singing voice. For Mushu, Disney, of course, wanted to emulate the same level of talent that Robin Williams had provided for Aladdin. The filmmakers initially approached Joe Pesci and Richard Dreyfuss until Michael Eisner considered Eddie Murphy. Murphy, who did not want to travel to record his lines, did so from his home in Englewood, New Jersey. Shouts out to Englewood, New Jersey. Now, Bruce Willis was originally cast as Li Shang before the part went to B.D. Wong. Li Shang's singing voice was performed by Donny Osmond, who had previously auditioned to be the speaking voice of the title character in Hercules. And we normally talk about the scores and the songs here, but let's save it because there's a bit of drama involved. And Jackie Chan voices Shang in the Chinese release, and Jackie Chan, who has a very successful singing career, I don't know if a lot of folks knew that, overseas in Asia, actually made a music video for the song I'll Make a Man Out of You, which was a very big decision by Disney as part of their marketing efforts for this film. While Mulan domestically outgrossed the previous two Disney animated films, which had preceded it, The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules, its box office returns failed to match those of the Disney films from the first half of the Renaissance, such as Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King. It did very well critically with an 86% Rotten Tomatoes score. And that is our production notes for Mulan.
Before we get into the discussion, we're going to take a brief break as we hear from a sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel. And now that we're back, number one reason, Mushu and Cricky. I didn't even think about this until doing the research for this film. This was Eddie Murphy's debut as a voice actor.
And do you want to know something funny about Eddie Murphy's debut as a voice actor?
Please tell
Yes.
us more, Zion.
So you guys know Eddie Murphy had this weird scandal in the 90s where he was caught,
With a
with
hooker,
this movie,
Yes.
this was like his first returning role back to like mainstream audiences
which is why he
since,
did a kids movie.
yeah. I just thought that was really interesting. I didn't really know that controversy until recently. So I was like, oh, wow.
You
Yeah,
just
it's
assumed he would have done more voice work before this, right?
He has the voice for it. Like
Right.
really unique characters, yeah.
This is the only voice work that he's done outside of the Shrek films.
You sure
yeah.
he hasn't done
This
anything else?
Hold on one second.
in terms of actual like voice specific roles, I think Donkeys is bread and butter,
Oh
and
yeah.
then I mean, yeah, Mushu, which we'll talk a little bit, but
I'm
I thought
genuine. Oh wait, no. Did he
yeah,
well, it was a TV series. It really wasn't like an actual film. But
for
the PJs, it was a short-lived.
wait, was he wasn't he the showrunner for that? Because he was the voice of the Super.
I believe so. I not necessarily showrunner. I know he was the producer on it, but yeah, he was the main character.
No, Zion, you're speaking my language because anything that aired on UPN or the WB, that's just what I watched. So
Ching, ching, ching.
yeah, so it's
That is
it's a
funny.
it
I
is
think I
yeah
missed that one.
a lot of the PJs
Because that one was
hang.
on ABC, and then they just moved it to UPN because it really
Yep,
wasn't doing well over there.
hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like Star Trek series, like every Star Trek series was on UPN.
Really?
That's what I watched on UPN.
Yeah, Simpsons reruns always on UPN.
No, I remember that.
Does UPN exist anymore?
No, I don't think
No,
so.
No.
got swallowed up.
Yeah, I could see that not being a thing anymore. Well, as far as voice work goes, if you're going to get anyone to try and emulate Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy's a great choice.
He has the charisma, the timing, and the speed for it.
And he's a big name, very big draw, especially at that time period. I mean, of course, he had his heyday of Beverly Hills Cop, Coming to America. Of course, he got his big start on SNL. But so many films that really, put Eddie Murphy on the map, and getting a name like him for this movie is a pretty big deal.
Well, let's talk about him then, right? Because you're starting to get into this, Anton. He really was one of the biggest stars of the 80s. You named some of them, right? 48 Hours, Trading Places. This is what he did in a row. I'll just rattle these off. In a row, he rips off 48 Hours, Trading Places, Eddie Murphy Delirious, the comedy special, Beverly Hills Cop, The Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop 2, another special Eddie Murphy Raw, Coming to America. Bangers, all of them.
Classics.
I even like The Golden Child, which I don't think is
Yeah.
a great movie, but I enjoy it.
But it's fun.
It's fun.
I think a couple big names in that movie are here.
It starts to
Absolutely.
flip on him in 1989 with Harlem Nights. That's a failure for him. It's his first real failure.
And that's crazy because I don't know if Harlem Nights necessarily bombed, but I know it didn't do Coming to America numbers at all.
I always love the poster for this film, though.
Okay, so the budget was 30 million and it made 60 million. So that's kind of
Yeah,
not
that's-
great.
Yeah, it didn't do great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
no.
mean, on paper, like big budget movie with
He
you know,
directed it.
yeah, and two of the biggest stand-up comedians of all time. Yeah,
I wouldn't
Yeah.
call it a great movie, but it's an interesting movie.
I've never
like I
seen
said,
it in full.
It's uneven. I don't know if he did himself any favors by directing it because that's the first movie he directed. He follows that up with another 48 Hours, which is, it makes money, but it's considered one of the worst sequels ever made.
mm-hmm.
He's in
Jeez.
Boomerang. That makes money too. I like Boomerang, but a lot of people don't seem to like it.
It doesn't have as much staying power, but I think if you appreciate the '90s, you're gonna love Boomerang.
I always liked it.
Yeah.
Get
was a
young
little-
Halle Berry.
It's a little dry towards the end, but most of it was really, really decent.
Okay, the next film, this is where it gets real bad for him. Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Mm-mm. Nope.
But didn't he come back with the Nutty Professor film?
He did, but before we get to the Nutty Professor, it gets bad for him. He's in a real slump. Beverly Hills Cop 3 bombs, one of the worst sequels ever made. Then he's in a very much forgotten movie called Vampire in Brooklyn.
Oh, I know about with Angela Bassett. You
Yeah,
talking
that's
about
another
something-
bomb.
Oh yeah.
I like Vampire in Brooklyn. It's not Coming to America, but it's
But you see the problem for him is all of a sudden he's in movies that aren't making money.
Oh no, that did not put asses in the seats. Not at
No,
all.
like Eddie, that wasn't that. Didn't he get his hair straightened for that film?
It's a
It was.
weird movie.
It's a very strange piece of cinema, but you know,
Sorry, I just pulled up the poster. He definitely did. Oh my
It's a
gosh,
weird It's a weird movie, man.
it's like whoever did this cover, like they should have deserved. They should get some sort of award. Not a good award, but this is very, very funny.
shit, they should have deserved to be fired because their cover was well, I think when he made that movie, he was and this could just be me speaking, but he was probably trying to emulate some of the black horror from like the 70s, like the Blackula films and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but it didn't
Yeah.
really translate as well as he thought it would. It could have been that, or it could have been him just needing a check.
Well, he has a lot of kids.
Oh, yeah. Let's go
Yeah.
with the check.
Yeah. It also made $35 million, so
Well,
that didn't work. But you're right, Zion, because 1996, he's in The Nutty Professor, and that was huge for him. It completely rejuvenated his career.
Oh yeah, Nutty Professor, man. I
Great
prefer
movie.
the sequel just because the sequel has Wanda Sykes. I'm very partial to Wanda Sykes, but
Yep.
the first one is really good. It's funny.
let's not forget that same year, Snoop Dogg also straightened his hair for Bones.
No, we ain't gonna disrespect Bones.
That is a classic.
Let me tell you about Bones. It's so bad that it's good. I used to be terrified of that movie as a child because they would always play it on BET. And you don't
Yeah.
like I don't know why, but it's one of those movies that's just so bad it's good. But yeah.
Yeah,
It's definitely bad.
it's a
Definitely bad.
bad is one way to put it.
Yeah. That's one of those movies where you see it and you're like, how did this happen?
But then also, Snoop Dogg really loved this genre so much he made a movie. Sure,
yeah.
that's great. Like that's awesome.
Back to the Eddie Murphy and how this relates to Mulan. So we're at his career now. It brings us to 1998. He does this voice role, Mushu, and he's in Dr. Dolittle, which is another big hit.
Mm-hmm.
Important year for him because this is when he starts to get into the family-friendly stuff.
Yeah.
This is the turning point for his career.
Oh yeah.
It's a career resurgence for him in one way because he would make a lot of money voicing Donkey in the Shrek series, right? And by a lot of money, I mean I've read that he made something like $50 million from it at least. But in another way, it's a turning point for his career in a more negative way, at least for fans of his earlier work, right? Because all of the R-rated leading man stuff for him was pretty much over. And he keeps trying to do it going forward. I'm just going to read you some names of movies. Metro, Holy Man, Life, Bowfinger, Showtime with Robert De Niro, Adventures of Pluto Nash, I Spy with Owen Wilson. All of them were box office failures.
I know Pluto Nash was a box office failure because I remember we had, I don't know if it was just my family, but we had like a lot of VHSs, but some of the covers were missing. So that was one of them that I remember that we had. And I didn't really do research on it until years later, but wound up doing research on it and figured out that it was one of his absolute worst. Like nobody really liked Pluto Nash or Holy Man. We had that one too. So
Yeah.
weird.
Pluto Nash was one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. It lost $100 million. But the family-friendly stuff that he was doing, that did better. We mentioned the Shrek films, Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, that did really well. Dr. Dolittle 2 did well. The Haunted Mansion did okay.
The Haunted Mansion bombed. So I don't know if y'all know this, but industry insider here. Damn, that sounded so cocky. But I
No,
digress.
it's okay. That's why you're a great guest, Zion.
Yeah, no, that's probably the wine that I had this talking. But a film has to make 3 times its production budget just to break even, right?
Yeah.
So it's really got me thinking about some of the because Eddie was doing big budget shit. So it really makes me think about some of the budgets. Like if he's doing an $80 million film, is at the bare minimum, it's got to be at least in the $200 million range to be deemed somewhat successful by the studio.
Yeah, they made it for 90 million and it made 182. So it's like,
Oh, Haunted Mansion?
Yeah, it's not great.
I think they went laundry money because there's no way. But I digress.
That has a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Holy crap!
Disney
Now,
has
I'm
It's
feeling
that
for-
bad. It's okay.
they've really distanced themselves from this film.
The Haunted Did you guys see the remake that came out?
Yeah, I saw that. with Lakeith Stanfield,
Yeah, him, and then
Oof. It
Danny
lost even more
DeVito.
money.
him, Danny DeVito. It was Tiffany Haddish, Rosario
Yep.
Dawson. Yeah, it was. It wasn't. I prefer the original one, but it was a nice little. But I do see why they're distancing themselves from that IP.
Well, the remake was made for 150 million, and guess how much money it made?
Oh no, it bombed because it came out a few weeks after Barbie. You were not
Yep.
making any money with that movie.
It made 117.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeesh.
Well, big. So he makes a very clear transition into kids movies. What do you guys think? Was Mushu good?
Yeah, I love him in here. With one caveat.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Murphy is a tremendous impersonator of other voices. He's I'm not going to compare him to Robin Williams because Robin Williams' talent was on another level. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Eddie Murphy. I think he's one of the all-time great talents. But what I would say is Robin Williams was a better actor than Eddie Murphy. Robin Williams had more acting range.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Murphy's vocal talents in here, I think it's a great performance, but he's just doing the Eddie Murphy voice. I was really hoping to hear. Have you ever heard him do other comedians' voices, like when he does Bill
Oh
Cosby
yeah.
or
Oh yeah.
why am I
He's
drawing a blank? Tracy Morgan. Like he
Tracy
can do them
Morgan.
like perfectly. And I was hoping to hear a little bit of that in this performance. And I maybe the script didn't need it the way it was needed for Genie to do all those different things with Robin Williams, but
No.
I'm happy with Eddie Murphy's performance here. It's a very memorable performance.
Yeah.
I thought it totally fit because one of the characters that I think Eddie Murphy plays the best is the character that's kind of pit up against the wall and is very fast talking and desperate. And I feel like that was Mushu in this film. He has something to prove. He'll talk a mile a minute. He'll get his point across. He'll just try to please you, put a smile on your face. And I feel like playing that character was just very authentic for Eddie Murphy. And I feel like that came off across really well for the character.
His character had an arc, which I liked.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't an arc as nearly as meaningful as Mulan's, but he's a supporting character, and that's okay. He was looking for redemption in the eyes of the other ancestors because they just viewed him as like, the village idiot, right? The screw up.
Or just to get in trouble because he killed the great stone dragon.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which I guess he managed to cover it up because it's never brought up again.
They never address it again.
Nope. But that's okay.
That's okay.
No, it's a great performance. I always forget he's actually a voice in this film though, because I think just because his donkey voice from Shrek is just so famous that I think it overshadows this a little bit, which is, not the fault of this film at all.
It's funny. When I think of Mushu, and like even though he has Cricky along with him as kind of his conscience as Mushu's conscience, Mushu's almost like a reverse Jiminy Cricket for Mulan, just giving her bad advice left and right.
Sounds
Uh,
about right.
which is I think it's hilarious. But at the same time, he's so well intentioned, and like you said, Pat, for a side character like that, or not necessarily like full side character, but not one that you would expect to have such like a very fulfilling character arc, is well done for a kids movie. Zion, what are your thoughts on Mushu?
So Mushu for me, I would say his performance works very well. I don't know, when it comes to studio films, especially animated studio films, I know that a studio the size of Disney, their fingerprint is going to be all on it. That's not to say that these characters can't have their own identities, but there is going to be like some interference there. So I think maybe like when it came to like the performance Eddie gave for Mushu, although it was really good, there was probably like some studio interference, like, hey, stay within this little rubric that we have for you. You can improvise just a little bit, but this is all we need from you. And I think he excelled at what he was asked to do. I don't know. He is not necessarily one of my favorite animated characters. I do prefer Donkey over Mushu.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really liked it. I think he showed up and did what he needed to do.
Yeah, I think trying to think of it too within the context of this film, it's a character that Disney for sure would put in, right? And so
Oh yeah.
if I'm trying to think of it in the context of Disney's marching orders are you have to have a talking animal that's going to be comedic relief. I'm satisfied that they gave the character depth, storyline, move the plot forward. It was actually very pivotal to the storyline and the main character's hero arc. So I'm very happy with the character.
Absolutely.
Number 2 reason, the production and the soundtrack. This is going to be a pretty beefy reason.
Mm-hmm.
Main character of the film, Mulan. I think the smartest thing the writers did is they did not make her some kind of a tomboy in the beginning.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a cooler character because of that. She's a total badass.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I was talking about in the beginning of like how mature this film is with how it develops her character, right? In the beginning, you have a character that's trying to balance all these things, whether it's honor, family, gender, or gender expectations and gender norms. And instead of having a character that already knows how to fight or already is cool and knows who they are and is very confident in themselves, you have someone that has to develop all those things, and you feel so good about that because you can step into her shoes and feel like, yeah, that's that feeling of inadequacy and being able to earn that confidence that she gets.
And she's just so smart. The way she uses her intelligence, like in the amazing montage with I'll Make a Man Out of You, where at the end, she figures out how to use the weights to get the arrow at the top of the, not the
Mm-hmm.
flagpole, but like, what is it? Just like, it's like a giant post.
Yeah, it's just giant post.
And then when she figures out how to wipe out the villain's army using the avalanche, where she sees the reflection of the mountain in her sword, it's all really well done,
Well,
really good writing.
did you guys see? Did you guys remember that even early callback in the beginning of the film during the matchmaker scene? She walks by like the two gentlemen that are playing like Go, like basically a version of chess,
Yes.
and it looks like one of the guys is like, I'm in a stuck situation. She moves the pieces and he's like, hey, like I'm gonna win. And I feel like that's like a really fun little, like, you could miss it or you see it's a little detail, like she has value to provide with her mind and she's smart.
I mean, she's included in the so-called like Disney princesses, even though she's not a princess, but whatever.
Yeah,
It never feels like a cliche.
I'm trying to pinpoint why is that for me. Like we've talked about, like maybe I think it really is just comes down to like good writing, that it just everything feels natural in how it's presented.
It does feel natural. The reason why it works for me is number one, they don't make her a cliched tomboy. Number two, she's just a very pragmatic hero. They don't treat her differently from the way they would treat any hero in any
Mhm.
other. If you want to look at this as like a war movie, which you could,
Mhm.
right? It's not
Mhm.
something you would traditionally think as a war movie, but I think if you were to label this as a war movie, I wouldn't disagree with you. And if she's the hero of the war movie, they treat her like they would treat the hero of any war movie, right? Where any situation or problem that she is confronted with, she just figures out how to solve. She just solves it, but she's not doing it just by physically fighting her way through everything. She's using her brain, and that really appeals to me when I'm watching this kind of movie. Like that's why I think it works so well.
Yeah, it's not necessarily someone that you're presented with like this main character that suddenly has all this skill or is just a immensely talented from the get-go. And I feel like that is something that's been lost when there's a lot of characters presented. We just kind of get very talented characters or very strong OP characters. I'm kind of thinking of the Star Wars like most recent trilogy. We get a lot of that. And actually, Zion, you mentioned, the 2020 Mulan. That is definitely one of the big criticisms of that character presented in that film is Mulan is presented as someone that already knows martial arts. Her village not only like accepts her for like being a badass, but is like, oh yeah, like you have value because of like your ability to like kick ass and that you're a woman and we respect you. Like it's already all there in the beginning.
See, and that's
So
the complete opposite of what made this movie. And that's
yeah,
the problem. That, that is the problem.
yeah. But this movie, I think, presented it very well and it told a story around it. So yeah, I was very very happy to kind of see such attention to detail for storytelling and character development in this film.
The best part about it for me too was at the end in the climax, and we're going to talk about the villain in a second, Shan Yu. When he realizes who she is, I think a lesser movie would have had him say some dumb, cliched stuff about her being a woman, but all he
Mhm.
says is just, "You're the soldier from the mountain."
Yeah.
And I think that's the best payoff for her character is they don't treat her
Mhm.
any differently than they would of any other hero from any other like war type of movie.
a woman,
Right.
treacherous snake.
That's
Right. We get that from that character, but he's treated like the cartoon character that he is, and he's just comedic relief.
It's so funny.
That's James Hong, right?
That's James Hong,
Yeah.
legendary James Hong, just
Still
killing
with
it.
us. Still with us
Yep,
in 2024.
He's working hard. He's still doing the Kung Fu Panda films.
Yep. Almost 100.
He's a hardworking man in Hollywood.
Yeah. We talked about him, kind of like the other week on the phone. We're like, this guy has never stopped working.
Yeah, because he's always like, you can go way back early in his career. He's worked every decade.
Lopan.
Like the legendary Lopan, old Lopan, like old Lopan in Big Trouble in Little China looks older than actual old James Hong.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Zion, have you seen Big Trouble in Little China?
no, I know exactly what it is, but that's one that
Oh,
I've
dude,
never
so
seen.
good.
It's oh my gosh,
So
you
satisfying.
got to see it. Oh man.
Is
It's
it
insane.
considered just a straight up action, or is it considered a western?
Comedy, action, fantasy.
I'd say
Fantasy.
almost at some points it kind of feels like an action satire, because you're presented with this character, Kurt Russell, who would be your typical like all American, like, action hero, big muscles, drives a truck,
Gotcha.
but throughout the film he's just spitting out one-liners, and he's bumbling things around and making the situation worse. But that's just one element of what makes that film so great. But yeah,
I'm gonna have to add that to the watch list now.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
so
no,
fun. It's so much fun.
Big Trouble is one of my beloved films, because it's just so unique. Oh yeah, and it inspired Raiden from Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Back to Mulan. Some say that Disney films are only as good as their villains. What do we think of Shan Yu?
Well, first, I guess to that statement, I would say there's definitely inconsistency.
Some say,
especially
not everyone.
I was gonna say,
Some.
I don't know. I was gonna say like some can say it. I will say, if we're going to kind of nitpick on villain strength, I would even argue Beauty and the Beast has some of the weakest villains in comparison to this film.
What?
That is
Gaston?
a hot take.
In comparison to this film, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
What? I completely disagree. Gaston's great.
He's fun. Like, don't get me wrong, iconic villain. But when I think of like a villain that like kind of actually like I think is a threat, or I think like is kind of presented as very much so like a true villain in the sense, Shan Yu's scary. And like I've never seen a Disney
Yeah.
film where they kind of allow the villain to just straight up murder people. I mean, of course we have Lord Frollo, who I think is the
A far
Lord
more
Farquaad.
complex villain.
Far more complex, but still very, very terrifying because of like his power and how he uses it and basically wants to commit genocide. But with Shan Yu, you have like basically
Definitely a threat.
Yeah, you have a threat.
I would say one-dimensional.
Yeah, but still, I think not much to the personality, right? It's just he wants to conquer China.
Yes. That's what I mean about one-dimensional. And the reason why I don't think he's a great Disney villain is, of all the people you know that have seen this film, how many of them could name the villain from this film?
That'd be a very biased question for me, because everyone I know around me loves this film. Yeah.
I bet you if you polled most people, though, and they're like, who's the villain from Mulan? They'd be like, the guy with the falcon.
Well, now we're going to have to poll people in the reel and say, can you name this? Can you name this villain?
I don't think he's a
to be
bad
honest,
villain.
I can't name him.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah, and like he's not. I don't think that Shan Yu is like all time great. No, but I do think that he's a very unique villain in the way that not only is he presented, but when they're sending the messengers away, and it's like, how many messengers do you need to deliver a message?
Yeah, ice cold.
Only one. Like,
Only one.
why put that in a Disney film? Like, that's nuts.
It's dark. You're right about the maturity of this film. That they really started with Hunchback of Notre Dame, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Or
Agree.
the whole scene with, little girl lost her doll, we have to return it to her. Just so menacing. And then not only that, you get the payoff of what they did. Like, how many Disney films in the Renaissance even touch that?
Not many.
Not many.
I do like his voice too, Miguel Ferrer. He's got a cool voice. If anything, I think he's underused. He's only in like 4 scenes, basically.
Yeah, I think part of it is you have to kind of prop up a very clear motivation for the villain, so that way it's not someone that we have to kind of think about too hard as like, do we sympathize with the character or not? Because the real focus here is the development of Mulan, and then the
Yeah.
the core people around her and her journey, versus like maybe if we get a more complex villain, then this film is what this film isn't very long at all already. So I think, and that I think it's to its benefit.
Yeah, I agree with you. It does make me wish for longer Disney movies though. Sometimes, I'm like, man, if you could do a lot of stuff with this villain, but they
No,
just
I
it's
see what
not
you're
that kind
saying.
of movie.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. It's a
What
kids
are
movie.
we? Are we looking for like a morally gray, sympathetic Sean Yu?
No,
That
no.
would be
I just
nice.
feel like I agree with you. He's so much of a threat that rewatching it now as an adult, I'm like, man, I wish he was in more scenes.
It's interesting when I think about other villains that there was time that needed to be had and context to not only develop like a strong villain, but also they're just not, what their intentions are, but also you see them as very calculated and also very complex. I'm actually really thinking a lot about Khan from the Star Trek series, where his intentions are very clear. He's going to destroy, like, he's going to destroy the crew of the Enterprise.
Yep.
But when you know his backstory and like what motivates him, it's like he's a very complex individual.
Yeah, he's not one dimensional.
No, he's very complex. But when you get prop that up against Shan Yu, it's just wants to conquer China. Yeah.
He's like, the Emperor invited me by building a wall.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
He's-
I guess he did.
He just kind of, the way he accepts challenges is like bros at the gym.
That's his whole motivation, right? He's like, there's a
Yeah.
wall. We're just going to have to take over the whole kingdom now. Okay.
I guess I'm gonna have to climb it.
That's so disrespectful.
Yeah, it's very, but that is the attitude, right? It's like, oh, you put these 300 weights in front of me. I guess I'm gonna have to lift them now.
And then they light the beacons of Gondor, which was cool.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Now all of China knows you're here. Good.
I think the most interesting part of the film for me was the tonal shift halfway through the film. They're singing A Girl Worth Fighting For. Up until that point, the movie's like pretty lighthearted. There's a couple scenes with Shan Yu, but you're like, oh, this guy seems like the Terminator. He's probably bad. But it's pretty lighthearted. And then we see what happens to the village and the Imperial Army. And the music just stops.
You don't have that in any other Disney film. You have emotional songs that will pull at your heartstrings, but something that really makes the record stop. And it's not just because there's a natural end to the song, but I think there actually is something a bit more meta about that in the storytelling of the song ended because the scene shifted so strongly, which is a really interesting way to then transition into this very serious scene.
Yeah. They discover the burnt village, the little girl's doll, the peppy musical numbers stop. There's not another song in the film, right? Except for we get the really brief reprise of "I'll Make a Man Out of You" when they're climbing the columns.
Yeah, but there's no like musical number.
No,
And that's actually that's a really good call out. I don't think I really thought about that too much, and that there wasn't more music or more musical numbers after that. So I feel like even acknowledging, even the film as a children's movie having to acknowledge, well, this fun and games have to kind of end here. We have a story to tell. Very mature for a kids film.
brilliant decision on their part. It really was.
But man, seeing that as a kid, I think that probably it was a lot clearer in theaters, like just how bad the decimation was, and like that scene and like the vastness. Kind of watching it in 4K, you do see a bit more of the detail. I think watching in VHS, you don't get that same detail, so it doesn't look as bad.
No, because when I probably saw this on VHS, it was probably on a square TV. And
Yep.
seeing this now on Disney Plus, I mean, we can start to talk about the animation. I mean, the avalanche scene is breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's one
No,
of the best things I've ever seen in a Disney movie.
It's amazing how they're able to kind of create, again, awesome spatial geography. These scenes that are in large mountain areas feel big and it feels massive. And again, it's not easy. We see other films that do it, like Atlantis. When I think of like different battle scenes, where another film where they had to actually build technology just to be able to film certain scenes. It's not an easy feat, and so that I think that this film has to be applauded, and that they were able to really advance technology and not sacrifice the quality of the animation for even the story that they wanted to tell.
Here's a question for you both, because we can all agree the avalanche scene is amazing. The animation is so good; it's like 2.5D.
Mhm.
Anton, I'll let you go first because Zion is answering his door for a delivery. It's almost the climax of the movie. Pretty much resolves the main threat of the Hun army. It's the peak of Mulan's achievements in some ways, right? Where she single-handedly wipes out the entire Hun army.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the big reveal of her afterwards, right? She finally gets exposed as a woman. Does the film peak too early?
No, at the end of the day, no, because of the way the story continued to play out. I think that dang, I just suddenly thought of Mushu going, they're popping out of the snow like daisies. It still properly tells a story of how Mulan is continuing to fight the gender norms and expectations of her culture despite what's been revealed, because she's been found out, but because of her actions she's being spared. If the movie ends there, like, it just, of course, it's just a very depressing end of the film. So if we're kind of counting that as like the climax, then I think a proper denouement is, how does she then close the circle of being able to capture her independence and prove her worth as an individual and like as a strong woman by utilizing the skills that she's learned leading up to that point, and then being able to really prove that to the people around her. And I think the movie does it in like 15 minutes. So I think it fits in really well, because then, yeah, the conclusion basically is her saving China. At least that's how I see it.
I think it's well said. I agree with you because they introduce the challenge of her now getting exposed as a female and her having to overcome that and going back to when they go to the Imperial City and no one will believe her about
Mhm.
she's like, some of the Huns survived, there's still a threat, yada yada yada. So they do a good job of addressing it. I've heard that about the film. Someone I know said like the film peaks too early with the avalanche, and
No, but I mean, you just made like an awesome point around, she, despite what she'd learned on her journey, like all of her new skills, what she's been able to accomplish to defeat the Huns, she still sits in a patriarchal society that still views her as like less than. But despite that, she continues on and she finishes her story. So yeah, I don't think that it peaks too early. I think that we get, especially for the length of the film, the right pacing and the way to kind of tie it up.
all right, we'll wait for Zion to get back.
Yeah,
I want to hear his thoughts on this.
they're popping out of the snow like daisies.
I forgot.
Mulan.
He
Is
does
that
do
Mulan? Ugh.
he does do a different voice at the very end when they're like, "Who are you?" and he's like, "Your worst nightmare."
Oh, he's a bad man. He also does what? You never seen a man in uniform before?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Who am I?
Goofball.
Who are you?
Which character
Orpheus.
was George Takei?
Well, because Pat Morita was
The Emperor.
the Emperor. Again, just small scene, but not a small role. Very fun.
Oh, Zion's back.
Oh, right. George Takei was the basically like the first ancestor.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Mushu.
right, right.
Yeah.
Sulu,
Yeah.
Zion.
Yes, sir.
The avalanche scene is amazing. Does the film peak too early though?
That is a very good question. I'm trying to pinpoint in my head when exactly does the I think it, to be quite honest with you, if I'm not mistaken, this is a similar runtime to The Lion King, isn't
Yeah, about
it?
like
Just
like an
about.
hour 25, hour 30.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about their scene where they had, it wasn't necessarily an avalanche in The Lion King, but it was the stampede. They happened at like similar times, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's pretty on brand with, something crazy happening in a Disney Renaissance piece.
Anton made a case that it doesn't because you still have a lot of storytelling left to do, which they do pull off.
See, that's the thing with Mulan. There was a lot happening yeah, because Mulan is borderline a war film. When you really think about it, it is, man, That is a good. I gotta ponder on that one. Circle back around to me, because that one I didn't really think about that too deeply.
I love talking about this like a war film. It kind of is, right? It really is.
Yeah, it's a
Oh yeah,
definitely has very strong anti-war messaging
And pro-war.
and pro war.
with jazzy songs,
Yeah.
How else are we going to defend China?
Yeah. How else are we going to defeat the Huns?
with jazzy songs.
Well, that's a good segue because we can talk about the soundtrack now.
I will take my father's place to fight for the emperor.
I mean, I wouldn't because I don't like my father, but look at you being a stand-up guy. All right.
So the talent involved in the music and the songs, it represented a major change for Disney. Longtime collaborators Alan Menken and Steven Schwartz, they were not involved in this film. Steven Schwartz was originally commissioned to write songs for the film. However, in late 1994, he was contacted by former Disney studio chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg to compose songs for DreamWorks' intended first animation feature, The Prince of Egypt, to which he agreed. Peter Schneider, then president of Disney Feature Animation, threatened to have Schwartz's name removed from any publicity materials for Pocahontas and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Michael Eisner phoned Schwartz and he urged him to back out of his commitment to DreamWorks, but Schwartz refused and he left the project. So he had already written 3 songs for this, titled Written in Stone, Destiny, and China Doll. They dropped those 3. And this was around the same time they were doing, the story and character changes during the development of this film. The songs featured that you hear in the film, they were written by composer Matthew Wilder and lyricist David Zippel. Zippel had worked on Hercules the previous year, but this was Wilder's first time working on a Disney film. Here's the cool bit. Danny Elfman and Thomas Newman were considered to score the film, and then English composer Rachel Portman was selected. However, she became pregnant during production and decided to back out. Following her departure, Randy Edelman, whose theme to Dragonheart was used in the trailer, Dragonheart, cool movie,
Fun
and
movie.
Kitaro were considered until Jerry Goldsmith became available. So Goldsmith does the score, Wilder and Zippel do the songs. I think they all did a magnificent job.
Despite it all, Eddie Murphy wasn't able to push in his song "Party All the Time" into this film, but
I
Produced by
didn't
Rick
even know he
James.
made music.
You never, wait, you didn't know Eddie Murphy had a song?
Sir, I was born in 1999. I had no idea he made music.
Okay, you need to.
Party All the Time is a banger. If you watch the music video, it has Rick James in the studio. It just starts with like Eddie Murphy putting on earphones, just singing into the studio mic. Party All the Time. It's actually really fun. I joke
Is
about
it
it.
as fun as Will Smith's Wild Wild West? That was a tie-in for his movie.
Still
fun.
very.
More
It
fun.
is because he's just literally keeps saying, "My girl wants to party all the time." That's literally what he's saying for a lot of the song.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say a lot of cocaine was involved in the making of that song.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Charlie Murphy was in there just observing everything.
Came out in 1986, Zion. It hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100.
My girl wants to party all the time, party all the time, party all the time.
My smile wiped away.
It's an incredibly bad song, and I love it.
Yeah.
I will say what's interesting is me and Pat has had this conversation. The composer or I mean, she wasn't the composer, but she was a runner up for it. Rachel Portman. I think it's interesting that she did that movie Beloved that I really liked, and it came out like the same year that Mulan came out. I just noticed it. I'm like, wait a minute. And coincidentally, they both were like under Disney's distribution thing. So I'm just like, huh. Look at Rachel. She got her check.
She was very active back then. I haven't heard from her much recently.
I think she stopped around the mid or late 2000. Well, no, it looks like the last movie she did, or the last one I'm seeing, is the Julia Child documentary back in 2021.
I haven't heard from her in a while.
Oh yeah, no, Rachel been chilling. She been enjoying her checks.
Yep.
But what do we think of the music here, Zion?
The music in Mulan is top tier. Like the Disney music now, it's I think the last Disney soundtrack that I kind of liked was I guess you could say kind of Moana. I really didn't care for Frozen because I remember when Frozen came out, everybody like lost their mind. They were like, this is the best movie in years." I really like. I remember watching Frozen and just being so underwhelmed, and the music didn't stick. I saw Wish last year. The music in that was just forgettable.
There's a
Mulan, they
there's a lot of things wrong with Wish.
I I wish I wouldn't have saw it. I tell you that. That's what I wish. Like Mulan just had. That's what I'm saying. Like it's indescribable. Just it came out during a time where Disney actually cared about what they were putting out. Like they were really like the pinnacle of just family oriented cinema back in the day. And now it's just like they are the McDonald's of family oriented cinema now, but it's just the music from Mulan, man. Like I'll be shouting the lyrics to Reflection. I actually did one time while drunk shout the lyrics to Reflection
Hell
while
yeah.
doing
Oh
karaoke.
man. Oh, I
Oh
love it.
my god,
I love it.
I'm amazed it didn't get a Academy Award nomination. It's an amazing
it
song.
didn't.
Nope.
Amazing song.
Oh, that's criminal.
I it so this is back when the Oscars had a comedy song score category, and
They didn't introduce Best Animated Feature yet, did they?
no, this was
No.
3 years. 2001 was the first year for that.
Oh, okay.
But Reflection and I'll Make a Man Out of You are bangers. They are two of some of my favorite Disney songs.
Would you say that it seems like a bit more adventurous with the style of the music in this film?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it was adventurous. I would say that it was creative for sure. Adventurous, no.
I'd say I think of like there's almost a familiarity with the style of the music in it, like it's whimsical, right? Like when I think of
Yeah.
A Girl Worth Fighting For, I'll Make a Man Out of You, like there's like a fun like liveliness to it, but at the same
Mhm.
time I kind of feel like maybe it's just the care that was put into the music that just for me feels like very just like you said, Zion, I think you made it put it best. It felt like there was a lot of well thought out, just
If you
care put into it.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you look at all of the previous, just let's just say you forget everything that came after Mulan and you just look at to the films that were leading up to Mulan, the music they follow like the same beats in the sense. Like they don't sound the same, but they have like the same feel to them in terms of like they're interchangeable. They make sense. They have a certain level of love and care poured into them. I don't know, and they just sound good. Like it's just good music. Now these kids aren't getting that, and I feel bad for
No.
them. I genuinely feel bad for them.
Really makes me miss this kind of traditionally animated Disney musical. Because you're right, they don't do this anymore.
I don't know what the cutoff. What I think wasn't the last hand drawn one, The Princess and the Frog.
I think so.
But what would you say was the last decent Disney musical? Because I hear everybody rave about Tangled, but I've never seen.
Tarzan.
Tangled is really fun. I
Oh,
mean, I
yeah,
really like I mean Coco has great music.
Pixar,
Coco.
though.
But
That's a
does
Pixar
Coco
movie.
count?
Yeah,
Or-
it's but that style is so different. The music in it is very different. It's not
But
like
And
your
does
that's a Pixar
traditional
movie. That's technically not a Disney movie.
Well, no. Does Pixar count though at this point? Since because at one
Again,
point Disney didn't fully own Pixar, but now since they fully own them, aren't they kind of like the same thing at this point?
They do operate independently, but you're right. They own them. I don't count Pixar movies as Disney movies. I still consider them their own thing.
it's also why it's so weird now that Disney's putting out more computer generated animation
Yeah.
because that was Pixar's thing for the longest time.
Well, somebody had a theory online. I don't know who they were, but I saw it years ago that it was sort of at the beginning of the pandemic where, like, you noticed Disney was putting everything on Disney Plus, and the theory was Disney was putting everything on Disney Plus that was Pixar related, but they were sort of reserving their own things because they eventually wanted to phase out Pixar and just like merge everything into like Walt Disney Animation, but it didn't really go the way they wanted it to.
I'm glad they didn't.
I really enjoyed Moana. I think that the music in that is really fun, but do I think it holds a candle to Mulan? No. But at the same time, like, hey, what do you know? Like, they are putting like Lin Manuel Miranda on the music, and you know he's a pretty big name in music nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
Oh God.
I think the answer to your question, Zion, is probably Tarzan is the last great Disney musical.
It's been so many years since I've seen Tarzan for me to.
That
I
Phil Collins
I
soundtrack.
can't.
Phil Collins goes so hard in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Frozen 2, no.
no, it's not Frozen.
Yeah, no.
It's no way.
Encanto, it's
No,
Encanto is
no.
fun, but it's not.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fun though, but it's not.
I turned Encanto off. I watched it like the
Yeah.
middle of the pandemic, and I turned it off midway through. It wasn't good. No.
Princess and the Frog was
Good movie.
a film that has a lot of heart and very conscious decision to do traditional animation. And yeah, I think I think that movie needs a bit more love. Actually, it is getting a lot of love because
Yeah, it is.
because Splash Mountain is no longer Splash Mountain.
Right. Yes, they repurposed it. It's not called Splash Mountain anymore, right?
No, it's Tiana's Bayou Adventure or something like that.
Which is not a cool name, but that's okay.
I mean,
Splash Mountain's a cooler name. It's a
I
cooler
was gonna say,
name.
It's also just a very new ride. So when people say it's been at the park for ages, it's like not really.
No.
It was.
Well, I
it was
guess
during,
it's better to associate that with Song of the South.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's another episode for another time because I genuinely don't understand why Disney hasn't made that film available to the public.
Because they want to separate themselves completely from anything that could make the company seem a little bit racist.
That racism should be the least of their concern.
Exactly, right?
Back to Mulan. I did not realize this launched the career of Christina Aguilera.
For like major distribution, yeah. Because then, I mean, Christina Aguilera, that's a big name in the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. She was one of the original Mouseketeers.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that her version of Reflection was her first single as like a, like adult singer. I didn't even realize it at the time.
It was?
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
she
I don't
did,
follow her career closely, so I wouldn't have
don't
known,
either.
but that's surprising.
and then she had some very intense music after that.
She did. And then the song that
Genie
plays
in the
during
Bottle.
the end credits is the only reason why I still remember 98 Degrees was a thing.
True to Your Heart. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like so like I forget that they're gonna do it, and then I forget about that song, and then the movie closes and you're like, true to your heart.
Yeah, it's not great.
I mean,
it doesn't even fit.
dude, I'm so into it. Like when it comes in.
You're a
Like,
big 98 Degrees fan? Did you buy their album?
Okay.
I admit they have a pretty cool album
Yeah.
title. One of their albums is called 98 Degrees and Rising. I'm like, that's kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. No, I wouldn't say that I'm like a top 98 Degrees fan, but I just do really enjoy that song. A lot of harmonica.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can move on.
Yeah.
98 Degrees. I don't know. Were they
O-Town.
like Dave Matthews Band?
Zion, you like O-Town, right?
Oh, what the hell is that?
You don't like O-Town. It's okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. That's why I'm asking.
You never had a dream come true. Yep.
I would
O-Town.
rather snort crack out of a cheeseburger. No.
We're throwing a lot of musical suggestions at Zion, but I want Zion to start with Party All the Time.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, if there's anything you're gonna take away from the episode of where to jump off next, it's Party All the Time and watch Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay. Well, no.
Yeah.
Now that you guys have given me a suggestion, I have a suggestion for both of you.
Oh, please.
So when Disney re-released, I think this was closer to 2010 because they used to do that weird thing when they would put movies inside of the vault. They brought Toy Story 1 and 2 out of the vault. And on Disney Channel, this is way past y'all time, but there were like these two kids, like they did like this weird rap it's embedded in my generation's brain and our memory. I will find the link and send to you. It's so bad, and I feel like that's what is played in the lobby when you wait to go into the gates of hell. That's what I feel like.
Well, it's not ringing any bells for me, so I'm ready for whenever you send the link. Okay.
Oh, it's gonna come at random. I'm not saying
Okay.
when. You're just gonna get a link, and y'all can be like, "What the fuck?"
So at a certain point, Zion's gonna send something that's gonna be giving me nightmares. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll check it out.
What's our next reason, Pat?
The reception in China, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, though. The Lion King had done really well in China, and Disney, they wanted the support of the Chinese government. They were trying to smooth over relations following the upset that had been caused by their funded release of Kundun.
Mm-hmm.
And this film did not do well in China.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons that we talked about earlier was just cultural perceptions of just this like story that it is a story that's told through childhood, right? And so then trying to adapt it for that audience, a little hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on the Chinese legend of, Hua Mulan, and it just didn't resonate with audiences in China. There was a lot of piracy that I read about that like hurt this film's box office performance there, but it was just a miss for Disney.
Did this film do worse or better than Pocahontas?
I don't even know if Pocahontas was released in China. Oh, you mean like it just international, like in general?
Oh yeah, just in general.
It did better.
Huh. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And that brings us to the next reason, right? Which is the box office piece. We were touching on this a bit in the beginning. It's interesting to analyze the financial performance of these films, particularly in the second half of the Disney Renaissance. On paper, this was a very successful film. It cost $90 million to produce. It made just over $300 million at the box office. But Disney's board did not see it that way.
But you gotta
Oh.
also factor in the home video sales as well.
I'm sure it made a lot there.
Oh yeah.
But if you're looking at this from the box office performance, it made a lot less than Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King. The budgets of these movies are what interest me. Just for some context, this movie cost more to make than Saving Private Ryan, which came
But
out the same
why?
year.
Where are these budgets going to? Because as somebody who's worked on sets, they give us Cheeto Frito-Lay chips. Sometimes they're off-brand, and we have those bagels that have been sitting there for hours on end. Where do these budgets go to?
I think part of it is animation takes longer than live action filming because of just is even especially with traditional animation, they're taking double, triple amount of time to make sure that they're drawing each new scene. It just takes time. And then with that, the amount of hours billed for each animator that you have on set. And then also on top of that, they're building new technology, right? I'm sure that costs a pretty penny. So animate that's actually kind of one of the things that they look at as it's cheaper to put out the live action films for Disney versus to even invest in like traditional animation. So it's part of the lost art, and it's why I always get excited when I see like traditional animated film, but cost wise it is more expensive to do something animated.
In
I'll
some
let you have
ways,
that one.
I think in some ways, yeah. What were you going to say, Zion?
No, I was telling Anton. I'll let you have that one.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good answer.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Anton. The other piece of it, too, in the first half of the Disney Renaissance, those films weren't that expensive to make. And I think that's a victim of circumstance for Disney because in the 80s, they flirted with bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
So they were, starting the decade in the 90s, they were very concerned with keeping costs under control. And The Lion King was so ridiculously successful for them. I think it set the bar too high for them where they started to think that they could replicate that kind of success. That made almost $1 billion in 1994 money. And I think they thought they could keep making that kind of money with each subsequent film.
Like with the Hunchback.
Mm.
Yes, which the Hunchback, so Zion, the craziest thing about the Hunchback of Notre Dame, it was the most expensive movie made in 1996. It cost more to make than Independence Day. It cost more to make than like Twister, which is kind of insane. And I
But
think the budgets just got out of control because I don't think they were concerned about spending money anymore. And I think it started to work against them.
And one crazy thing about film budgets that they normally, I don't know, that sort of intrigued me is that's just the production budget. That's not even factoring in marketing costs.
Right.
Marketing costs, or in Disney's case, since they spend a crap ton of money on like producing toys and just home entertainment and that sort of thing, that's not even factoring that in. So it truly makes you wonder like how much money was spent in total. I would genuinely like to see a profit and loss sheet just over the years. Like, is the company like barely staying afloat? Because it makes you wonder. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting that you point that out, Zion. I think like just being in the know for how the company has evolved over time to kind of look at those things, like where is the money more just efficient in certain segments of the business. It's why even during the tenures of like Eisner, it was suddenly this shift from let's put less money into theatrical animated films and put more of it to direct to VHS is actually is a direct result of these films are too expensive to make right now. They're not our biggest
Yeah.
money maker.
And it
But
makes
then
you. Oh, go ahead.
but I was going to say, but then from the brand perspective, a lot of people just started to notice like what made Disney the animation was no longer like the crown jewel, and that was just something that was just embarrassing for the company. So they had to shift back.
And it
So I
really makes you think, like, why? I guess for me, like, it from a story perspective, why do they select or did select some of the films that they did wound up putting into production? Because if you even look just at, okay, you have Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, you start to see a shift. I want to say towards like Hunchback of Notre Dame and Pocahontas. Those two films in specific, my apologies. Although they were good, it makes you wonder like why were these because they are lesser in quality story wise. Just in terms of the other films, but it just makes you think like, why did they pick these ones to put into production versus something else? That's what genuinely piques my interest. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall just in those rooms. But I'm glad that they did get made because it shows that they were willing to take risks, even though some of the risks didn't really work out the way they wanted to.
That was also around the time when Katzenberg was leaving, and he got a lot of things greenlit. He was out by 94, and then, Eisner really started to clamp down on a lot of things.
Yeah, and Katzenberg left with Spielberg to do DreamWorks, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, if he wouldn't have left, we probably wouldn't have gotten Prince of Egypt because I know he, for years, was trying to get like an animated version of the Ten Commandments made in some variation, but Disney was like, nah, we don't want to do it. So he eventually wound up leaving, not just over that, but other things. And he
Oh,
got it.
there's a lot of reasons
Yeah.
why he left. We talk about it a little bit in our Ants episode.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to listen to that one.
Yeah, there was a lot of political and financial reasons why he left. It's really
wow.
interesting. I can recommend a book to you if you're interested about the foundation of DreamWorks.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool. It's called The Men Who Would Be King.
Let
Remind me,
me.
I'll send you the link.
Oh, yeah. That
But yeah,
sounds
this
good.
film, I mean, it did well, but not nearly as well as Disney had hoped. And it's kind of easy to see why we got the post Renaissance, how they wanted to change things up. They got away from the musical things. We had the rise of 3D animation, which forced them to change things. And it was a very interesting period for Disney. Gentlemen, do we have anything to add before we start to wrap this up?
I don't think I'm ever going to try Szechuan sauce again.
Was
That's
it
about it.
good, though?
I don't know. I don't think it's worth the hype. What
I
was
mean,
it like? People were like paying like hundreds of dollars for it.
Not for a McDonald's sauce packet. I wouldn't
Oh,
have.
that's
oh
insane.
yeah. Like during the whole Rick and Morty run where everyone just wants the Szechuan sauce.
I remember people were going crazy. It was sort of like similar to the Popeye sandwich craze where people were like showing up there going bananas for it.
It's too much. Well, Zion, as the guest, would you like to go first and give your rating?
Yeah, so Mulan definitely wasn't a film that I grew up watching, but it's a film that I saw later in life that I truly appreciate. It has a ton of rewatch value. Like if it was on TV today, I probably wouldn't change the channel. I would let it just run all the way through. It has a message and it has a very specific feel to it that I can't put into words. And I've said that more than once throughout this podcast. But Mulan gets about a solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. Holds up very well, very good music, very good animation style. I really enjoyed it.
What kind of letter grade would you translate that to?
We'll say probably about like a B plus.
I think for me, I just hold into very high regard the way that this story is told, the animation, and the music is just feels like classic Disney with a very modern touch. And the fact that we can even just look to the music as like a placeholder for, where in the barometer of good Disney music has it been since Mulan, I think that it just really speaks a lot to itself, and just the strength in this movie. So I really, really love this film, and I don't think it's a bit of a surprise. Like for me, this film is an A, and I do kind of put it up there objectively from my perspective on all elements that we generally critique these films with.
We're all very high on this film. This is a great movie. It's completely worthy of its reputation. For anyone, longtime listeners, wondering why we're even covering it, we just wanted to. That's the basic reason. Like with any other Disney movie, it has its critics. There's so much to like here. You have an incredible protagonist. We didn't even talk about the voice performance from Ming-Na Wen. I think it's great. We have a good story, a simple story, but that's okay. That's what these movies are, right? They're children's movies. The stories are not going to be complicated, and this story's a really compelling one. The animation is beautiful, and the best thing about it is the soundtrack. It's iconic. Jerry Goldsmith doing the score. We have classic songs. It's really everything you could want from an animated children's movie. Between this and the last Disney film we covered, Anton, Hunchback of Notre Dame, I'm starting to reassess how we would rank films from the Renaissance. I think the back half of it is probably better than it gets credit for. I am going to be right in between the both of you with an A minus. I'll give it a little bit of a ding for I just think the villain is very one dimensional. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely watch this again. This was a great movie to rewatch with my family. Yeah, A minus for me. It's a lot to love here. It's a great movie.
Good
Well,
times.
Zion, always a pleasure, especially talking Disney with you.
Absolutely. I had such a great time. I can't wait to be back. I know I'm scheduled for a few more episodes, so whenever those happen,
That's
I
right.
will see y'all when the wind blows.
Yeah. Well, Zion, we have a few follow-ups, right? You're sending us music that's going to haunt us, and you have a film and some music to listen to on your end. But Pat
Oh,
said it
yeah.
best. It's always a pleasure, man.
Absolutely. Thank you both for having me.
Of course. This episode may be coming out the day before Thanksgiving. So if it does, happy Thanksgiving to all of our American listeners. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a follow and a 5-star review. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. And as always, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. For those of you who would like to support us directly, we have a Patreon. Links are in the description. Thanks for listening and see you next time.